All right. Hi, guys. I'm going to run through grammar, and I hope that this doesn't glitch too much. It's kind of glitchy, which is weird. Hopefully, this makes a decent video for you. These are your grammar notes. They are on Google Classroom. Under classwork, under grammar, you'll see subject verb notes. When you click on it, it should make you your own copy. You can just take your notes there. It might help to have this video running on your phone and then have your iPad open with this, with your notes, or you could flip that. However you want to do it, two devices might make it easier. We're going to talk today about subject and verb. Every single sentence, in order to be a sentence and not be a fragment, needs a subject and verb. And those can be kind of tricky. I feel like we throw around grammar terms a lot. So some of the steps that you want to take to find your subject and verb before you can jump into making sure that they agree. Just identifying them is really important. So I'm going to start at the top here with just some steps for identifying subject and verb. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to find and cross out prepositional phrases. I'll talk about what these are. So if you're like, preposition, what is that? Don't worry, we'll get there. But sometimes prepositional phrases can confuse us and can make us think, oh, maybe that's the subject. So we want to get rid of those. That'll just help us. The next thing we want to do is we want to find and label the verb. And the verb is the action in the sentence. So whatever, it could be like run, jump. It could also be a verb like is or are. So that's the action that we're going to label as our verb. Then to find the subject, we ask who or what is doing the verb. That is your subject. Whoops. There we go. That's your subject. And then the last thing that we do is we check that they agree. Okay. If you need to pause at any time as I'm going through this so you can make sure you get everything written down, please do. What I mean by checking that the subject and verb agree, right here, a singular subject requires a singular verb. A plural subject requires a plural verb. Okay? And the tricky part is that singular verbs have S's at the end and plural verbs do not. When we're talking about nouns or things and we make them plural, we add S's to them. So this can kind of confuse us. So, for example, we'll talk a very simple sentence, the dog. If it was plural, let me get over here. How do we make dog plural? We just add an S, the dogs, right? But if we had our dog doing something, so let's say the dog is barking, the verb that we would need, right? The dog barks is what we would say. This verb has an S at the end, versus over here, the dogs bark. The plural verb does not have an S at the end. This is the one tricky piece. When we speak, we use it. It kind of just comes naturally to us if we have English as our first language. But this is a very important rule that we need to come back to, and especially as sentences get more complicated. Right here, important rule, we cannot always rely on what sounds correct. Sometimes our sentences are going to get very complex and it won't sound right, but it grammatically is right. And that's something that SAT is going to be kind of testing us on. So as we get into what we can't always rely on what sounds correct, right here, let's talk about those prepositional phrases because we need to make sure that we're not letting a noun in a prepositional phrase run away with the verb. So before we can talk through that, let's talk about what prepositions are. If you remember back to your freshman year, you talked about these. Prepositions are words that show relationship. So some really common ones. Here we go. Sorry, it's like a weird text box. It's not really a text box. Come on. There we go. Okay. Common prepositions are of. We'll see that one a lot. In, on, for, before, with, by, about, after, between, and to. These are ones you'll see a lot. There are more. I think there's like 23 in the English language. These are ones that you're going to see a lot, and they are words, again, that show relationships. So if we see a preposition in a sentence, we need to take a look, see what the entire phrase is, and get rid of it so that we don't get confused as we're writing. So let's take a look at this example sentence. The ability of the gymnast. And then the verb we're going to pick is either astonish or astonishes everyone. Make sure I get my sample sentence written down correctly. So if we look here, do you see any prepositions? Looking over here, we see the word of. Of the gymnast is a preposition. I think, nope, that's not how I do it. Close out of that. There is a way to do strike through. Let me find it. There we go, found it. Okay. So we're going to ignore of the gymnast, because if we have that, looking at gymnast, that might confuse us when we're trying to look at the verb. So now we have to ask ourselves, so we've got our verb is going to be one of these two. Who or what in this sentence is doing the astonishing? What's astonishing everyone? And our answer is the ability. So this would be our subject. So we have to ask ourselves, is the subject singular or plural? The ability is singular. It's not abilities. There's only one ability. And since it's singular, we need the singular verb, which is astonishes. Look at that. The next one, the books in my room is or are disorganized. Okay. Again, we have to start with those prepositional phrases. Do we see any prepositions? In is a preposition, in my room. So we're going to cross that off and ignore it. And then we have to look, the books is or are disorganized. What in this sentence is or are disorganized? Books. So there's our subject. So if that's our subject, is it singular or plural? There are more than one book, so it is plural. So we need the plural verb. Remember that singular verbs have S's at the end. So we want are. That's our plural verb. The next one, a vase of flowers decorates or decorate each table. So again, we're looking for prepositional phrases first. We see the preposition of what? Of flowers. So we are going to cross that out. Our verb is either decorates or decorate. So we have to ask who or what is doing the decorating. In this sentence, a vase. So that is the subject. Is it one vase, singular, or is it multiple vases? Here we only have one. So we have a singular subject. We need the singular verb. If we didn't get rid of this prepositional phrase, we might be confused and think that flowers is the verb or the subject, but it is not. Vase is. And so vase is singular. So is it decorates or decorate? We need the singular verb. Singular verbs have S's at the end, so we want decorates. So a vase of flowers decorates each table. And the last one, the operation of this machine requires or require much skill. Okay, so if we are looking at this one, are there any prepositional phrases? We've got of what? Of this machine. So then we're going to cross that off and ignore the prepositional phrase. We know that this is our verb, so then who or what in this sentence requires much skill? In this sentence, it is the operation is what's requiring the skill. So that's your subject. So is this singular or plural? This is singular. Operation, one. So since this is singular, we need the singular verb. The singular verb is requires. All right, so that's what we need. That's why we need to look out for those prepositional phrases. That's our first step. Don't get confused by a prepositional phrase. The next thing that we need to make sure that we are keeping an eye on is that the verb needs to agree in number with the subject, which generally is going to come before the verb, not with the subject complement. That's usually what comes after the verb. Not always, but usually. So for example, sorry, picked the wrong thing. Our main traffic problem is or are careless drivers. Okay. In this one, we don't actually see any prepositional phrases, which is nice and helpful. Is or are, this is our verb. What in this sentence is our? And we're going to be looking probably before the verb. We're going to see that traffic problem, we're talking about the main traffic problem is our subject. The complement is kind of who or what gets verbed. It's what completes the verb. So careless drivers is our subject complement. We don't want to be confused by the complement that comes after the verb. We want to focus on the subject that generally is going to come before. So problem is our subject. Is problem singular or plural? In this sentence, it is singular, so we need the singular verb, which is. Because remember, singular verbs have S's at the end. Okay, for the next one, same idea. The girl kicks 1,000 practice shots every day. Okay, so this is our verb, kick or kicks, that's our verb. So we need to ask who or what is doing the kicking. The girl, so girl is our subject. And then who or what does she kick, right? What it completes the verb is practice shots. So this over here is plural, but this is the subject complement. This is not, the complement of the verb. It is not the subject. Again, the subject generally is going to come before the verb. So girl is singular, so we need the singular verb. Singular verbs have S's at the end, so the girl kicks 1,000 practice shots every day. Okay. So far so good. Same rule. This is where it gets a little tricky. There are some words that are always singular because they are referring to only one person at a time. And some of these might seem a little weird to consider singular, but it's important that we learn to recognize these as singular words. So words like each, either, neither, anyone, each one, either one, neither one, or everyone. Okay, so again, if you need to pause so you can get those typed in, I did go through them kind of quickly. So some of these make a lot of sense, like each one, we're talking about each one individually. Everyone, I think, is the one that's the trickiest. Everyone sounds like we're referring to all these people, like a big group of people, but we're actually talking about each person individually. So if we see these words, if these are our subjects, it is a singular subject. We need a singular verb. So, for example, each of these books is or are brand new. So we start by looking for prepositional phrases. We see the preposition of, and then of what? Of these books. So we can get rid of, oh goodness, I keep clicking the wrong. It's a different key on a Mac versus a PC. So anyway, each is or are brand new. So we know that the word each, that's our subject here, each is singular, so we need our singular verb. Singular verbs end in S, so we are going to get rid of that, and it'll be is. Each of these books is brand new. The next one, everyone in class is or are reading. So in this one, we see in is a preposition. In what? In class. So we're going to get rid of that prepositional phrase. So who or what is reading? Everyone is. So we see everyone as our subject. So we have to remember that everyone is always going to be a singular subject, which means we need our singular verb. So we're going to get rid of that. Everyone in class is reading. Okay. A couple other issues that we might run into. If a sentence begins with there or here, that's actually part of a verb. And so we need to, it's usually going to be that there is or there are, here is or here are. So we need to be careful and not decide which we want, if it's singular or plural, is or are, until after we look at the rest of the sentence to find the subject. So, for example, there is or are. Okay, right now, we don't know what we're talking about, right? We don't know what our subject is. We can't decide if it's singular or plural. So there is or are no batteries in this flashlight. Okay, so what in the sentence are there not? Is there not? Batteries, so this is our subject. So then we know, since batteries are plural, we want the plural verb, are. Okay, the bell just rang. So here we go. Now I can show you my face. Okay, let's finish this up here. So the next one, same idea. Here is or are. We don't know what there is or are, so we need to wait in the sentence until we see the subject because it follows the verb. So there is or are the assignment that was missing. So what is or are there in this sentence? The assignment, that's our subject. Is it singular or plural? It's one assignment, so it's singular. So we want the singular verb, which starts or would which would end with an S. So here is the assignment that was missing. So again, these sentences are pretty simple. So it might seem like, oh, that's exactly what I would expect. As the sentences get more complex, we really need to come back to these rules. All right, collective nouns. These are fun. Collective nouns are words that could be singular, but can also be plural. These are words like class or group. If this group or class, a group of people, if they are acting as a single unit, they're all doing the exact same thing together, then it is a singular, you would need a singular verb. If the people in the group are individually doing their own thing, or maybe they're not all in agreement, or they're just doing things separately, then if they're acting individually, then it is a plural group and you need a plural verb. Checking for a pronoun can also help you when you're figuring this out. If you see there, then that means that you must have a plural. If you see it's, that means it's singular. So let me show you an example. And we will use class as our example because we're all in a class, right? So if I said the class, got to figure out if it's is or are, now in the library, we have to ask, if the class is in the library, does that mean that everyone in the class has worked as a unit? They're all acting as a unit together? In this situation, yes, we definitely would all be doing the exact same thing. We're in the library, so we are one group. We need the singular verb is, singular. Class could also be plural. So here's an example. The class is or are giving their presentations. First thing that helps us is seeing that there. This is telling us that each person is giving a presentation, right? Each person has their own presentation that they've done research for, that they have worked hard on, that they created the slides for. They're giving their own presentation. They're acting individually, which means that the class here is actually plural. There are many people in this class, each doing their own thing. They're acting individually. So because of that, we need the plural verb. We need are. The class are giving their presentations. If I said the class is giving its presentation, that would mean that all of us worked together on one presentation and we were giving it to like the whole school or something, and we were all doing it together. That's not usually what we have. And we also have that pronoun there, right? The class are giving their presentations. Now that doesn't sound right. Google doesn't even think that's right. You can see it's trying to edit it, but it actually is grammatically correct. So collective nouns can be tricky. Another thing that can be tricky as a rule to understand, but then makes sense when you're speaking, is that weights, measurements, periods of time, and amounts of money generally take on a singular verb. So, like 10 pounds or $10, those seem like they should be plural because there's $10. So, like, it should be plural. But you wouldn't say $10 are a lot of money, right? You would say $10 is a lot of money. Maybe when you were a kid you thought it was a lot of money, but anyway. So anytime you have one of those weights, measurements, periods of time, amounts of money, it's a singular like concept because again, kind of like with the collective nouns, we're talking about the $10 as one unit. So for this, $10 seems or seem a fair price for the table on Facebook Marketplace. Okay, so if you look at this sentence, $10 we're thinking of that as one group. It is a singular subject. So we need a singular verb. Our singular verb has an S at the end, so we want it to be seems. $10 seems a fair price for the table on Facebook Marketplace. Okay, so those are your notes. Make sure that you've got those all written down. We are going to be practicing with these for the next couple class times, and then we'll work on a test. This is an important concept that you understand. So, again, the sentences will get trickier when they get more complex, but this is the basic idea right here. A singular subject requires a singular verb, and a plural subject requires a plural verb. All right, have a wonderful rest of your day. I will see you guys next week.